President a moment ago through text messaging because we have a Chinese church plant that is meeting for the very first time today in Kirkland. And, this is something that we've been praying about for years. And God has sent us a gentleman from China who is fluent in the Chinese language. He's a pastor, but he travels back and forth. And so he's actually leaving in 2 weeks. So we're in the middle of building a website and a Zoom account. So using technology, it'll be 6 a.m. on Sunday when he's preaching online for the 11 a.m. service on Saturday here, with the difference when he goes back to China. And so kind of unusual, right? It'll be a whole different day of the week and he'll be giving the message. My name is Pastor Tyler, and I serve here in the Washington Conference as Personal Ministries Director. And what that means is I do outreach, evangelism, church revitalization, church planting, Native American ministries, and pretty much anything my boss, Doug Bing, tells me to do. And in the last 5 years, we have planted 12 different churches here in the Washington Conference in about 5 different languages. Think about that. 5 different languages, including the one we're working on right now in Chinese. Chinese is the third most common language spoken in the greater Seattle area. And this has been something we've been praying about for a long time. And so right now we're putting the pieces together, and hopefully we'll see this thing continue to grow and reach people for Christ. I'm glad to be here this morning. I want you to do me a favor, if you would, and please take out your smartphone. Take out your smartphone if you would be so kind. And now you should also have received a flyer or a piece of paper advertising the upcoming seminar. Did you all get that? Now the QR code on there, that's actually will take you to Google Maps on how to get here, but you already know where here is because you're here this morning. But on the bottom of the page, you'll see the URL. It's relevantseminars.org/ I think it says Better Health Ferndale. Is that what it says? A Better Life Ferndale. And what you can do, I'm going to give you a homework assignment. In fact, for those of you that are also watching online right now, you don't have that in front of you. But if you were to pull out your smartphone and if you were to type in relevantseminars.org/ what was the last part of it? A Better Life Ferndale. So relevantseminars.org/ A Better Life Ferndale. That will take you to our website, kind of a long URL, I can see that. That'll take you to our website. And if you're on a smartphone, which I'm on right now, of course, you can access it on pretty much anything that you can get online with, is on the smartphone in the upper right-hand corner, there's a little gray box. And if you click that gray box, it'll open up a menu. And if you look, it'll say Tell a Friend. And if you click on Tell a Friend, it will allow you to post this on Facebook, Twitter, or LinkedIn. And so it's a really easy way. Now, not everybody here is on Twitter or LinkedIn, but I imagine a number of you are probably on Facebook. It's a really easy way to invite people just by posting it on your Facebook. Look at what I'm going to be going to. Look at what's coming to Ferndale. I can't wait. You need to come to, because when you post it on your social media, it automatically allows people to click on it and it'll take them to the website. So it's really, it can't get any easier to invite and let everybody know in your circle of influence. Now, this upcoming seminar begins in 13 days, begins on Friday, February 11th, and it's a different type of seminar. It's not the traditional evangelistic prophecy seminar that we've grown to appreciate as Adventists, but this 10-part series is going to focus on you. One of the things the last 2 years have taught us is that we need to take our mental health seriously. And what affects one's mental health are things like lifestyle, relationships, money management, marriage, parenting, decision-making. So we're going to take a very holistic approach. Now, we are going to address things like depression and anxiety. We're also going to address other mental illnesses, how to increase one's emotional intelligence. But this seminar is all about you. It's about how can we take charge and improve the major areas of our life. And so it's going to be Bible-based because I don't think you can improve the major areas of your life without a surrendered life to Jesus Christ. And so it is going to be Bible-based, but I'm going to be drawing from a number of resources and studies that were done by secular universities as well. And so the way it's going to go each night is we're going to have about a 40-minute lecture. Each night you'll be handed a lesson guide. So while you listen to the lecture, you can actually fill in the blanks and you'll be able to take notes to track along. And then right after the lecture, those that are here live, now if you're watching online, it's going to be kind of hard to do, but maybe we can email you. If you register for the seminar, we could email you PDFs of the lesson guides for each night. But those of you that are here live, we'll actually break into, as we feel comfortable, into some small groups, and there are going to be some discussion questions. Because one of the things that we will learn is to improve your life, you have to be humble and you have to be willing to learn from everybody. Because everybody has some wisdom that they can bring to the table. And then each night there's going to be a small homework assignment, principles that you can apply. We're going to be looking at universal principles on how to improve the major areas of one's life because mental illness is real. In fact, today they say 1 out of 4 people aged 18 and older at some point in their life will struggle with a mental health issue. Most often, it's going to be major depression. But there's others that will struggle with anxiety. And so we're going to be talking about this over the next, or starting on February 11th for 10 presentations. Now, at no point in the seminar am I going to ask anybody to reveal what it is in their life that they struggle with, because this is a very personal thing. So coming to this, if you are struggling, and in a group this size here this morning at the Ferndale Church, I'm not sure how many are watching online, but I'm sure somebody who's listening to my voice right now is struggling with mental health and they haven't told anybody about it. Maybe their spouse, maybe their kids, but nobody else. And so I'm not going to invite you to come up front and announce to the world, all right? And so I want you to know that this is a safe place to come to. And so we're going to have next week, we're going to have some additional flyers that you'll be able to pick up here at the church, some postcard size flyers that you can pick up and grab as many as you want, and you can share them with people. This is a great opportunity to invite people to the Ferndale Church, to your church, and we're going to be addressing some really important issues in life. So, any questions on that? No questions at all. All right. Let me ask you a question. Oh, did I hear someone was going to say something? Maybe not. Let me ask you a question. Do I have your permission to speak openly and honestly with you this morning? Lillian said yes. Others said yes. And I'm glad that's the case. I was going to do it anyways. But it's nice to know that we're on the same page. Now, I don't want you to get hung up on any theological issues because we're going to be looking at something that perhaps you have not seen before in the Bible. Now, during the I should mention, I'm using slides this morning. So those of you here in the church, you'll be able to see my slides. If you're watching online, you won't be able to see the slides that I'm showing. And so I apologize for that, but you can at least follow along as best as possible. So during the 1880s, there were gifted athletes in North America, Europe, and Australia, and they all wanted to do what they considered the holy grail of athletic achievement. They all wanted to beat the elusive 4-minute mile. In fact, nobody had ever thought it was even possible. And decades went by, and nobody could run a mile in under 4 minutes. And then on May 6, 1954, Roger Bannister, 25-year-old medical student, did what many thought was unthinkable. But the story isn't over, because after Roger broke the 4-minute mile, it took 46 days for John Landy to break it. 1 year later, 3 runners all beat the 4-minute mile in the same race. By 1978, over 200 runners had made this accomplishment. Today, nearly 1,500 athletes around the world have run the mile in under 4 minutes. Included are some high school-aged athletes. How was that possible? That at one time, for decades, people thought there was no way you could run a mile in under 4 minutes. And then once it was done, it seemed like everybody then was able to accomplish it. This phenomenon can be explained by the theory of self-efficacy. You see, this theory teaches that those with high self-efficacy are more likely to take the most action towards their goals. In other words, they will persist in the face of adversity, and they will push the barriers of what they think is possible. Now, know this, any adversity that you're going through in life, either you've gone through, you're going through now, or you will go through, the good news is somebody else before you has experienced that same trial, that same trouble, and yet somehow they were able to survive. You see, those with self-efficacy are able to reframe their failures and obstacles as positive opportunities for growth. And so the question for today is, do you have a growth mindset or do you have a fixed mindset? When it comes to accomplishments, when it comes to getting through life, are you in a growth or a fixed mindset? Now, some of the things that the past 2 years have taught us, and I mentioned this in the introduction, is the need to work on our mental health by having a growth mindset. Now, understand that just because you may be a believer in Christ, you are not immune to problems in your mental health. I'm going to share something with you, and I'll reiterate it once our program begins here in a couple of weeks, and that is this. If you are a believer, you are a Christian, and if you're seeing a therapist or a psychologist or a counselor, or if you're taking medication to help you with your mental health, I want you to know that you are not a second-class citizen. Did you hear what I said? You are not a second-class citizen, and God loves you. We need to understand that God heals people different ways. And God can heal people through medicine. God can heal people through miracles. God can heal people through technology in the medicine field, see? Now, during the seminar, and you'll hear me emphasize this, is if somebody is on any kind of medication, make sure you do not ever stop taking medication without first consulting your primary care physician. Because what happens is people begin to make lifestyle changes and they'll start feeling better. And they think, oh, I feel better. I don't need to take this anymore. They'll just drop it cold turkey, and that is a very dangerous thing to do. And so again, even as a Christian, you may struggle when it comes to areas of mental health. And if you do, it does not mean God doesn't love you. It doesn't mean that you don't trust God enough. And the reason I say this is some years ago, this was when I started my master's in marriage and family therapy. I've since finished it. But I had a church member come up to me at a church here in our conference. It wasn't this church, but it was a church in our conference. And she began to ask me, in fact, after the seminar, we sat in the back pew, and she began to ask me about mental health. And she told me what she struggled with, and she began to open up to me. And, I was kind of asking her questions like, so what are you doing to combat that? Have you talked to family? Are you seeing a doctor or a therapist? Tell me about your story. Tell me about your journey. And she said this to me. She said, I told my mom about it, and my mom said, the reason I'm struggling with depression is because I'm not praying enough and I'm not trusting God. That's what she said to me. And I said, with all due respect, your mom is wrong. You hear what I said? The fact that you're struggling with depression does not mean you're not praying enough. It doesn't mean that you don't love God or trust God enough. It means there's something in your lifestyle that needs to be fixed or changed, or there's something going on up here that needs to be fixed or changed. And while we believe in miracles, we also believe that God can heal people through medicine and through seeing a good physician. And so after hearing that, I've come to see that others have the same mindset. And so you may disagree with my position, and that's okay. You're allowed to be wrong in church. I'll let you be wrong today. But when you look into somebody's eyes and they say they're struggling with something, and then using religion as a guilt against them, that's not what we want to do, friends. Now, the past 2 years have cast a spotlight on certain truths. Now, these truths may have always been there, but the last 2 years since COVID has cast a spotlight. Here are some of the truths that I want you to know about. Number one, everyone is struggling in at least one area of their life. Did you know that? Every single person has at least one area in their life that is completely messed up. And I know it's easy to come to church and put on a smile. We kind of think everybody's got it together. But I'm going to tell you, including myself, none of us here have it together in every area of our life. Now, the virus has affected everybody, some in different areas. You know, some people are angry about the laws that they have to follow. Have you met people like this? You know, they're angry that you have to wear a mask. They're angry that, some are angry that others won't wear a mask. Some are angry that you have to be vaccinated. Some are angry that, that you are going to get vaccinated. And there's, these extremes on both sides. We've seen that politics has divided a lot of people. In fact, there are family members that won't even talk to other family members because they disagree on who the other person voted for. Since this started, people have attended virtual funerals, visited with hurting people virtually. They have dealt with broken marriages while trying to maintain their own family. We have pastors in our conference that have been dealing with this on all sides. Members are angry at them because we have masks. Members are angry at them because they're not enforcing it hard enough. And it's like some of our pastors in our conference, no matter what they do, they're going to anger somebody, right? And they're just trying to hold their own life and ministry and family together, and they're being attacked on all sides. People have gotten up with internet conspiracies. Have you met people who have done this? You get a bunch of people staying home from work online all day. I guess they have too much time, right? In fact, here's what I love to do. If you meet someone who's all into internet conspiracies, here's what you want to ask them. Are you ready? Here's what I ask them. I say, can you tell me any conspiracy out there that you don't agree with? Ask them that question and see what they say. They'll look at you cross-eyed. I know people that have gotten caught back up with pornography in their lives during this time. I know people that have been wrestling with their own demons and they've questioned their faith in God. Some have had such busy daily schedules that by the time they get home, they completely crash. They have very little time to take care of their own mental health. Despite a global pandemic, over the past 2 years, Americans and those that have moved here have built more wealth than at any other time in world history. Now, you may not feel wealthy today, but just the very fact that you're born and you live in this country ought to tell you that you are wealthy. I mean, from the stock market to the housing market, it seems like every year, every month, every quarter, it is setting new records. But the stock market and the housing market aren't the only things that have gone up. Since COVID hit, the obesity rate has gone up. The incarceration rate has gone up. Mental health has gone up. Divorce has gone up. Addictions to meth and other drugs, suicide. More and more teenagers, especially young girls, are cutting on themselves. In fact, cutting among young girls has gone up over 30% in the last couple of years. Fewer people are attending worship services. Fewer people are plugged into religious communities. Time spent around the dinner table with their kids. Intimacy among married couples is at the lowest in recorded history. This tells us that we've lost intimacy. We've lost a connection with one another. Never before in history have we had the capability to find answers instantly. I mean, here I am sitting in the front row. I've got my friend, her name's Sunshine. I love that name, Sunshine, because everywhere she goes, I say, everywhere you go, you bring sunshine, right? She's texting me pictures of the new church that's meeting this morning, the new Chinese church. I've got people at Mount Vernon texting me pictures because my daughter's giving a sermon there today. I'm texting these pictures to our ministerial, Bill Roberts. I'm texting pictures to our conference president, Doug Bing. All just in a matter of a minute, I'm able to stay in touch with all these different people, letting them know what's going on throughout our conference. I mean, instant communication. And yet we've never been more angry and more exhausted than at any time in our life. I mean, you may have 1,000 friends on social media, but you can't find somebody to help you move that couch, right? You know, the Bible says in Proverbs 18, a man who has friends must himself be friendly, but there is a friend who sticks closer than a brother. And of course, that friend is not the friend you have on social media. That's the friend you have up in heaven. You know, more and more of us are waking up at 3 a.m. and we're not able to go back to sleep. Now, at first, it might have been 5 a.m. You know, your normal time to get up is 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. You start waking up at 5 a.m. and that early morning awakening, pretty soon it's 4 a.m., 3 a.m. Then you start waking up at 2 a.m. and you wonder, why can't I get back to sleep? You know, the Apostle Paul tells us in the book of Philippians, he says, be anxious for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving. Let your requests be made known to God. Be anxious for nothing. Yet today, anxiety is growing by leaps and bounds. It has never been easier for people to unplug from their life and to plug into something else. Netflix, social media, right? Hulu. And we ask ourselves the question, is this what my life is supposed to be like? I mean, am I just going to grind this thing out for the next 20, 30, 40 years and then I die? I mean, there has to be more to my life. So let me ask you, how many of you want something different? I think all of us do. We all want something different. I mean, all of us want to experience, you know, Jesus said in John 10:10, he says, I have come, now he says, the enemy comes to steal, right? But he says, I have come that they might have life and have it more abundantly. But with all this coming down upon us, it's really hard to experience that abundant life that Jesus promised. Now, most people in life want similar things, but the results are going to be very different. For example, most people, they want a good marriage. Most people want better relationships. Most people want to be healthier. Most people want to do better when it comes to their finances. And most people want to be better when it comes to their parenting skills. And here's often what happens, and we may not realize this, but this is what happens. When we look at other people that have what we want, so we look at other people that have what we want, and we tend to think that maybe that person was just lucky. Right? Either we think they were lucky or maybe we're jealous and we don't like them. We're envious, we're jealous, maybe both. But most of the time, that person that has what we want, it's not because they were lucky. It's because they lived a life with consistency. Life with what, everybody? Consistency. They were intentional about everything that they did in life. I mean, if you look at almost any successful person, you will find and you will see that success leaves clues. And here's why. Successful people do consistently what other people do occasionally. I'm going to repeat that. Successful people do consistently what other people do occasionally. You see, when you see people that are doing well with money, you see someone who has consistently done smart things with money over a long period of time. And what happens is the people that do good things occasionally, they will look at the people that do good things consistently and they will discount that person's consistency. Again, successful people do consistently what other people do occasionally. And the reason I share this with you is because if we are struggling in one of the major areas of our life, and all of us have at least one area, including myself, there's a very good chance it's because we are not being consistent in that particular area, but rather we are very inconsistent in that area, which is why we are struggling. You see, there's two reasons why we are not as consistent as we want to be. Now, the first reason is we are too focused on what to do. This may surprise you. The reason we're inconsistent is we're too focused on what we want to do. And the second reason is you've been trying too hard for too long. Now, let's unpack these. When most people think of goals, they think of what they want to do. When somebody thinks of a goal, they think of what they want to do. But I'm going to suggest to you this morning that instead of focusing on what you want to do, I want you to focus on the who. Can somebody here this morning, just so I know that you're still awake, can somebody say who instead of do? So don't focus on what to do, but rather focus on the who. Instead of asking what should I do, ask who do I want to become? And the reason we want to focus on the who is because this is our identity, and identity is what drives action. You see, when somebody speaks, or I should say, when we think about something, we think in pictures. But when we speak in words. And if you want to be, say, good at parenting, instead of focusing on what to do, focus on the who. Focus on the identity of what does a good parent look like. You see, if I want to be a better parent, then what I need to do is I need to picture in my mind what that looks like. What does a good parent look like? If you want to have a great marriage, then picture in your mind what does a good marriage look like. Don't just say to yourself, I want to pay off my debts. Well, there's nothing wrong with doing that. But rather ask, who do I want to be? I know who I want to be. I want to be debt-free. I want to be debt-free. I want to be incredibly generous when it comes to supporting my local church. Amen? It's focusing on your identity and who it is that you want to be. I want to be in control of my money. Don't just say to yourself, I want to have a better marriage. Again, there's nothing wrong with this. However, ask yourself who you want to be. I want to be a better spouse. I want to be more patient. I want to be more kind and respectful when it comes to my spouse. Don't just say, I want to have better relationships. Say, I want to be in better relationships. I want to have a better relationship with my kids. I want to be a better parent. I want to be more consistent when it comes to spending time with my child. Because who do you want to become? Or better yet, here's the real question. Who does God want you to? That's what's really important in life. And so you want to start with the who before the do, because identity shapes action. In other words, when you know who you are, you will know what you need to do. So picture in your mind, whatever it is you're lacking, picture in your mind what success looks like. Say, that's who I want to be. Because ultimately, I believe as Christians, God wants us to excel in the major areas of life. Is that a true statement, yes or no? I mean, doesn't God want His church to be the head and not the tail, yes or no? Absolutely. I mean, I think God wants people out in the world to so look at the Adventist church and say, man, these people have it going on. I mean, if I want to have a better marriage, I need to go to the Adventist church and study with them because they can show me how I can be better when it comes to marriage. Hey, if I want to do better with my finances, I know what I need to do. I need to go to the Adventist church because they're always doing classes on how to help people with their personal finances. Hey, if I want to be a better parent, I know you ought to go to the Adventist church. They're always doing programs on how to be a better parent. I mean, in my mind, that's what I would love to see is not just, hey, if you want to eat healthier, go to the Adventist church, although I appreciate that because I follow and I support the biblical health principles. But what if anytime somebody wanted to improve an area of their life, they were met with the phrase, well, you need to go talk to the Adventist? because their church, they can show you how to really live that abundant life in Jesus. Now let's unpack the second reason. You've been trying too hard for too long. That's the second reason. Most people aren't consistent. They've been trying too hard for too long. Now, in the most important areas of life, we try to do better. Again, for example, I'm trying to have a better marriage, trying to be a better Christian. I'm going to try to stop yelling at my kids. But here's what I want you to do. I want you to stop trying, and I want you to start training. That's a paradigm shift. Stop trying and start training, because trying never achieves consistent results. Training is what brings consistent results. I mean, to try something is like an attempt to change with very minimal commitment. But when I say that I am trying, it's like I'm saying that, there really isn't a full commitment. I'm trying, but, I'm really not fully bought in. But to train is a wholehearted commitment to achieve a specific result. You see, when we try, we are hoping that a good result, comes to pass. But when you're training, you've got a plan. When you're training, you're not acting according to your feelings, you're acting according to your commitment. You see, when it comes to training and sports, we use an acronym that describes the greatest athlete in that particular sport. In fact, we call them the GOAT, right? Greatest of all time. Use that expression, the GOAT. You think about basketball, who's the GOAT in basketball? Now, I would possibly say Wilt Chamberlain, but I'm not going to split hairs, all right? Now, I know here in the Pacific Northwest, some of you aren't going to like this, but when it comes to football, who's the GOAT? Tom Brady. I know we're not Patriot fans up here, but I'm going to give credit where credit's due. It's Tom Brady. When it comes to surfing, who's the greatest of all time? Kelly Slater. Come on. When it comes to baseball, who's the greatest of all time? Babe Ruth. There you go. When it comes to skateboarding, who's the greatest of all time? Tony Hawk. When it comes to bowling, who's the greatest of all time? Really? Am I the only one who has time to watch bowling? Hey, it's Pete Weber. You were going to say that, right? That was on the tip of your tongue. You were going to say that, right? Well, we use that phrase, GOAT. Now, how many of you watch the Olympics? Anybody here ever watch the Olympics? A lot of us do. Many people believe that Michael Phelps is the greatest Olympian of all time. The reason they say that is because he has won 28 medals, with 23 of them being gold. Now, I'm not going to split hairs. I realize in swimming, there's multiple ways to win gold, whereas if you just played basketball or baseball, that's one event, and you usually win one gold medal. But the Olympics can trace their history back to Greece. And they were known in Greece for their athletic accomplishments. And so as Paul is there in Corinth, which is located in Greece, he begins to share with the people there how they can have eternal life. And what he does is Paul used the phrase training as his example, because Paul knew his audience, and Paul knew that they would understand what it is that he was describing. And so notice here, if you have your Bible, it's up on the screen. But for those at home, you can go to 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 24 and 25. Now, for the sake of today, I am using a more modern translation because I like how it's worded. So 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 24. And now here, Paul is talking to the Corinthians about training. And he says, "Do you not know that those who run in a race all run, but one receives the prize?" He says, "Run in such a way that you may obtain it." Paul says to run in such a way that you're going to win the prize. In other words, if you're going to play, you might as well play to win, right? That's what Paul says here. If you're going to play, you might as well play to win. And then he goes on. He says, everyone who competes in the games, again, he's talking to the Corinthians. This is the birthplace, the Olympics. Everyone who competes in the games goes into what type of training? Strict training. They do it to get a crown that will not last, but we do it to get a crown that will last for how long? Forever. Paul goes on to say that they have strict training. And as people of faith, he says, we get a crown, not a perishing one, but of people of faith, we get a crown that will last forever. And here's what's incredible. The Greek word that Paul uses there for training, that Greek word, the actual meaning of it, it means to contend for victory. Think about that. When Paul talks about training to win that crown that will last forever, that word training he uses is it means to contend for victory, to strain every nerve toward the goal. Paul uses the word to represent the Christian life as if it was an athletic contest. I mean, you think about examples of those people that have won or run marathons. Has anybody here ever run a marathon? Let me see your hands. Anybody here? You walked it, but did you finish it? Well, very cool. That's an accomplishment. No? My sister Melanie does marathons. Once she was diagnosed with cancer, it kind of motivated her, and she began to do things that she never thought were possible. And can you imagine, when somebody runs a marathon, they typically train for months to prepare for it. And they push their body, right? They push their body. And of course, in a marathon, much of it has to do with what happens right here, because mentally, you're trying to make yourself stronger to push once you hit that wall, to keep pushing forward. But can you imagine if you were going to run a marathon, and as you're on the starting line, you're there and you're stretching and you're kind of getting in shape, getting ready here to start this run. And what if you found out the guy next to you that was going to run next to you? The guy next to you, he never trained, not once. You would ask him, are you serious? We're like going to run 26 plus miles here, and you're telling me you haven't trained? And if he were to say to you, oh, yeah, I was just too busy. But we're going to see how it goes. You see, when you have a vision, when you're fighting for something that matters, when you have a goal, when you are compelled to do something that could change your family tree, trying apart from training is unthinkable. You see, I'm not trying to change my life. I'm not trying to change my family tree, but rather I am training to change my life. Can you see the difference? Yes or no? I am training because I want to change my family tree. I'm not trying to have a better marriage. I'm going to train to have a better marriage. Can you see the difference? Yes or no? So again, Paul uses the idea of being an athlete. It's not I'm trying to do something. No. He said I'm training to do something, right? I'm going to be victorious in this area of my life by God's grace. I'm going to train for it. Now, by the way, I want to talk for just a moment to the men here in church and the men watching streaming. If you want to have a better marriage, men, there's two things you got to do, right? Number one, you got to read the book of Proverbs. Read the book of Proverbs. And number two is you have to watch a Liam Neeson movie. All right? I mean, think about it. Think about it. Every movie this guy is in, he has to fight to protect his family. There was a movie that came out called Taken. And the whole premise was his family was taken hostage, and so he's got to fight a bunch of bad guys to get his family back. And then, of course, they came up with a sequel, Taken 2, and I don't want to spoil it for you, but once again, his family's taken hostage and he's got to fight them to get them back. And if that's not bad enough, guess what? Taken 3, right? He's not a very good guy to be with, right? His family gets taken for the 3rd time. And then he's in another movie called The Commuter. Every movie this guy is in, the point I'm making, I'm joking about watching the lead. You understand that. Sarcastic. The point I'm making is this guy fights for his family. And so my challenge for the men this morning is to fight for your family, to fight for your marriage. In fact, there are 2 things that we can learn from Liam Neeson movies. Number 1, he fights for his family. And number 2, don't marry this guy unless you want to be abducted, right? Because in every movie he's in, whoever marries him, they get abducted and held for ransom. So you don't want to do that. He will save you, right? Oh, yeah. And so you see the premise of these movies is it's all about a guy wanting to fight for his family. But that's not the real fight I'm talking about, right? The fight I'm talking about is the spiritual. You understand that, right? You understand I'm being sarcastic. I'm not saying after sundown tonight to go out and rent a bunch of Liam Neeson movies. I hope you understand the sarcasm there. So the idea, going back to what Paul said, is I'm not trying to have better money habits. I'm going to train to be better with my personal finances. I'm not trying to live a life with purpose. I'm going to train to live my life with purpose. I want to challenge you this morning to stop trying, start training. Start training for who you know God wants you to be. And God wants his people to be the head and not the tail. In fact, as we continue here in 1 Corinthians chapter 9, if you're online, we're going to look at verse 26 and 27. Notice what he says. Paul says, "Therefore I do not run like someone running aimlessly. I do not fight like a boxer beating the air." He says, "No, I strike a blow to my body, and I make it my slave, so that after I have preached to others, I myself will not be disqualified from the prize." Notice what he says. He says, I run with purpose every step. You know, this idea, he says, look, I'm not just shadow boxing. Paul says, I discipline my body like an athlete, training it to be what it should. You see, like an athlete, when Paul says, I train like an athlete, it starts with identity. Like an athlete, I start training. Because when you know who you are, you will know what it is you need to do in your life. Identity drives action. And so again, Paul does not say, I'm trying, but rather he says, I'm training. And for some of us here this morning, for some of us watching online, it's time that we stop trying and it's time that we start training. For example, if I want to lose weight and I see an ad for, I don't know, a discount on a dozen donuts. They're on sale. I love donuts. Who doesn't love donuts, right? Have you ever had someone say to you, oh, I can't have a donut, I've already eaten? Nobody ever says no to a donut, right? But you do. Because if I'm training to be healthier, I tell myself no to those pastries because I am training to be healthier. See? If I'm working to get out of debt, and I see that new car is for sale and they're asking 0 down, right? 0% interest. Because I'm training to get out of debt, to get my finances in order, I can say no to that new car. You know, ladies can say no to that new purse if you're training to get out of debt. Families can say no to eating out at restaurants, no to that vacation, because if they are training to get their finances in order, they understand their identity, they know they want to be debt-free, and if they're training, well, they can learn to say no. If you want to have a good marriage with your spouse, you need to start training. How do you train to have a good marriage? Well, you start planning date nights, right? You say, if I'm training to be a better spouse, that means I'm going to check my attitude. If I'm training to be a better husband, a better wife, I'm going to do something kind for the one that I love. I'm going to show appreciation. And why is that? Because I am training. If you want to be a better parent, you start training. I'm going to start spending more time with my kids. I'm going to put down my smartphone at the park, and instead of just telling my kids, hey, go play while mom and dad sit on their smartphone, I see it happen all the time, I'm going to get up and I'm going to interact and I'm going to engage with my child. I will make my child feel like they are the most important person on the planet. Remember, start with identity. Who do you want to be? Because when you know who you are, it's your identity that shapes your actions. Now, I'm going to stop trying to live my life with purpose because I am training. Let me give you an example. When I was 22 years old, actually, I guess I was 21 years old, I was in the Navy, and I was about to leave for a 6-month deployment. And I can remember walking onto that aircraft carrier. I'm 21 years old. I'm walking onto that ship, about to leave for 6 months, and I had less than $10 to my name. That was not a good feeling. Have you ever been so po? Notice I said po. There's a difference between po and poor. Po is when you're so po you can't even afford the R, right? That's like, anybody here ever been that so po before that you can't even afford the R? See, growing up in the house I grew up in, nobody ever taught me how to do personal finances. Nobody ever taught me how to manage my own personal finances. And so when I was 20, 21 years old in the military, man, I was bouncing checks all over town. I was terrible with money. I remember having more month than I had in my paycheck. So like the 20th of the month, it's like, okay, I guess the next 10 days I'm not doing anything because I don't have any more money left. And so walking onto that ship with less than $10 to my name, I remember that feeling inside, and I remember the conversation I had with myself. I told myself, never again. Have you ever had that conversation with yourself? You say, never again. I put myself in this situation. I'm both my problem, but I can also be my solution. I'm never going to live this way again. And so when I got off that ship, I began to buy books on business, and I began to buy books on personal finance, and I began to buy books on investing. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to find out what other smart people do. I'm going to follow best practices, assuming if it worked for them, it's also going to work for me. And so for the last 20 years, when it comes to finance, not only did I go to school and get an MBA, but I studied it, because I wasn't trying to be smart with my money. I was what? Training. Can you see the difference, yes or no? I was training. I wasn't just waiting, hoping something good would happen. I was going to be very intentional and move to make it happen. When it came to marriage, early on, my wife and I were way too young when we got married, and we should have spent more time together dating and growing in that relationship, and we both made some really dumb mistakes early on. But thankfully, because of forgiveness and because of God's grace, we decided, 18 years ago, 20 years ago, that if we're going to have a good marriage, we're not going to try to have a good marriage. We're going to what? Train to have a good marriage. Can you see this, yes or no? And this is what Paul is talking about. No? You see, I grew up in a home, and I want to make myself vulnerable. I grew up in a home where there were drugs, where there were alcohol, where there was physical and sexual abuse. My wife grew up in a home where there wasn't the physical and sexual abuse, but there was drugs and alcohol. And so when we had kids, I've got 2 kids, we weren't just going to try to raise our kids good. What were we going to do? We were going to train, right? Like an athlete. We were going to train. And by God's grace, my 2 kids, Nate and Bella, they're the first 2 kids on my wife's side of the family and on my side of the family, catch this, that are growing up in a home where there's no drugs, there's no alcohol, and there's no physical and sexual abuse. Amen? You see, it's all about saying, I want to train, I want to change my family tree. I remember what it was like being in debt. I remember what it was like having less than $10 to my name. And I said to myself, I am never going to experience this again. When it comes to my finances, I'm going to train. And because my wife and I have been training in these major areas of our life, by God's grace, we are 100% debt-free. Because we're not trying, we're doing what? We are training. My goal is that my family tree, through the next generation of my kids, Nate and Bella, they will never have debt. They will never have drugs, never have alcohol, never have physical and sexual abuse. By God's grace, amen? It's about saying, I'm going to change my family tree. I'm not trying, I'm what? I'm going to stop trying to live our life with purpose because we are in training. It's all about breaking that cycle of abuse. It's all about saying, I want to train so that my kids, the next generation, have it better. We know that successful people do consistently what other people do what? Occasionally. They see someone who's winning with money and they want to discount that person. They say, oh, they just got lucky, right? No. Because for years we didn't eat at restaurants, or if we did, it was like Taco Tuesday at Taco Bell. It's because we don't have car payments. We don't have credit card debt. We don't have student loans. It's because we shop at Target and Costco for our clothing. It's because we shop at thrift stores for our clothing, right? We've made these changes. We buy furniture on Facebook and Craigslist in good condition. We buy vehicles that are used with low mileage because we're not trying, we're what? We're training. Whether it's your finances, your marriage, your health, anything in life, don't just try, train. I want to have a closer walk with my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. How can I do that? Just by trying and hoping it happens? No, I've got to train. How do I train? I train because I set aside time in the morning to spend in His Word, the Bible, and in prayer, right? It's all about training. I want to make sure that's very, very clear in people's minds. As you train to improve the major areas of your life, you will not only bless your family, but I believe you will put a smile on the face of your Heavenly Father. Because to live a victorious life isn't about what you will do tomorrow, it's about being faithful and being obedient today. Training for victory in the major areas of life is about honoring God today. You see, Jesus was victorious and He honored His Heavenly Father when He protected a woman that had been dragged into the street to be stoned. When Jesus walked into the temple and they were buying and selling and using it for their own selfish gain, remember, Jesus began to turn over tables. Jesus understood these things and He trained for them. I mean, there were times when Jesus would turn the cheek and there were times when Jesus would turn over tables, right? Got to train. Jesus fought. Here's the point I'm making. Jesus fought for the things that were important to Him. My question to you this morning is, are you willing to fight in your life for the things that are important to you? Will you train so that you can fight for your family? Will you train so that you can fight for your kids? Will you train so that you can fight for your personal finances? Will you train so that you can fight for your health? Will you train so that you can fight for your personal purity? And if you're struggling with things online, cut the internet cable. What area, and this is the question I want to close with before I pray, what area in your life do you want to train for? That training starts today. Our seminar is going to begin on Friday, February 11th here at 7 p.m. We're going to be going over some of the major areas of our life with the mindset that we are training because we want to have that crown that doesn't perish. Because we want, as a church, we want to be the head and not the tail. Amen? We want the world to look upon Seventh-day Adventist Christians and say, man, those people, they got it together. And all of the principles that we are going to learn are all going to be based on the Bible. So we know we can trust them, and we know that they're going to work. I'm going to have a closing prayer, and then I'm going to invite up our singer to come up and close us in song. And so again, those of you joining us online, thank you very much. I hope you were blessed. I hope you were encouraged. I hope you start training so that you can be ready come February 11th. Let's pray. Father in heaven, as we bow our heads this morning, we come to you in prayer, and we ask you, Lord, to help us improve the major areas of our life, Lord. Help us to have a life that is not only a life of integrity, but that we would be very intentional, Lord, about changing and improving and basing our life on what your word has to say, because you want us to have life. You want us to experience that abundant life, but when we're saddled with debt, when our body is riddled with disease, when our marriage is falling apart, when our kids are going crazy in this world, Lord, it's hard to experience abundant life when these things are happening. So I pray for us as a Ferndale church, as a church family, Lord, that we would take these principles, we would begin to train, and that you would help us to be the head, not the tail. Help us to take our mental health seriously today. We ask and pray in Jesus' name. I'm going to invite, we've got someone who's going to come up and sing. Is that correct? All right, just wanted to double check.